What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's Correlation Nation, the one and only place you need to go to get the best breakdowns in the space, period. No questions. Tonight, we're going to be going over UFC Fight Night, Paris, and it's Imavov versus Borralho. And I may be wrong, because the thing is, I hear Imavov, I hear Imavov. I don't know. It's one or the other. I guess, tomato, tomato, right? Let's hop into this card. It looks like I think we had 14 bouts. Now we're down to 13. We did lose the Patricio Pitbull, and his opponent didn't make weight. And then Faris Ziam was not able to, unfortunately wasn't able to make it to the fight due to a death in the family, right? I'm sure everyone's aware of that. But his opponent's going to remain on the card. They found a short notice replacement. I believe that was in Hardwick. I'm not sure, but we will get to that. Now, just real quick, we will go over the weigh-ins. Outside of, obviously, Patricio's opponent, it does look like everybody made weight. Yes, it does. The one thing I was a little bit surprised was the Delia coming in at 239. I didn't realize that he would weigh in that. I'm not sure if that's typical for him. He's coming over from, PFL or, whatever other promotion he was fighting for. But that is a rematch. Is what it is. Let's hop into this. Let's go to the breakdowns. Now, I know this is a last-second video. Same kind of thing with the Contender Series. It might be that way for a while. It's really difficult because I try to do really in-depth breakdowns. And sometimes, I have fighters, like a whole card of fighters that I have not even looked at. And so when you combine Contender Series with, a 13, 14 fight card, it gets pretty wild, especially when I have, other things I got going on. So we're going to hop into the breakdowns, and we will start at the, the bottom fight, and we will work our way up. So the first fight we have is Shauna Bannon going against Sam Hughes. This is kind of a tricky one, in my opinion. It's been a little while since I gone over the fight, so let's pull them up and see what we have. Let me just go. I'm going to attempt to just go to the overall view of this, because there's a chance that both of them are right here. Dun, dun, dun. Well, yeah, they are. They're both right here. Perfect. Okay. So you can see right here we have Shauna Bannon. She is a fairly light-footed striker. She has a bladed stance with decent bounce and some evasive ability. But overall, she does have pretty poor range management. Fights behind a side push kick, it's different. And, she will also throw a switch high kick off of it. Guard is very wide. Boxing is very erratic. Willing to work in the clinch. She has decent knees and elbows. Has an improved defensive grappling skill set with some submission upside. We've seen it in her last two fights. She got the submission in her last one, but you've seen a glimpse of it in the fight previously, so this is kind of new to her game, or at least it seems that way, that she's willing to integrate this defensive. I say defensive because it's something that she uses defensively. Like in her last fight, she was knocked to the ground and then fished for this and ended up, getting it. She has I don't know. You don't see a lot of fighters that fight the way she does. It is a bit different. But anyways, on the other side of this, we have Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes is she's fairly light-footed striker. Shows a bit of bounce with decent footwork and solid range management. Fights behind a nice left jab. Clean 1-2. Throws a solid backside. Right leg low kick off her hands. She carries hands low, fights with good pace, seems to be a pretty sound grappler, but she can be outclassed. I don't know that Shauna Bannon is going to be the one that's going to submit Sam Hughes. I don't really see it going down like that. I think that this fight, all in all, is pretty interesting because, you know, I think Sam Hughes is the more technically sound fighter. All in all, I think she's a little bit more well-rounded. But she's also somebody that's not really, like, great at any one thing. Like, she's good at a lot, but not really great at anything. But, you know, Shauna Bannon's really not great at any one thing outside of her unique striking ability. Like, it is unique, in my opinion, and maybe that's not entirely fair. I mean, I'm sure there's other fighters that fight that way, but you just don't see it a lot at the UFC level. You know, I don't know that, well, we won't go into that, but I think this is a tough one. You know, I probably wouldn't really be wanting to, like, put anything on this fight, personally, because this could easily go either way. Let's be real. This fight could easily go either way, depending on whether Shauna can keep Sam at range and use her, you know, this side push kick thing, the dilly that she uses. I'm gonna go with Sam Hughes. I think that she can. It's tough. Yeah, I think Sam Hughes can. I think she can pull this off. Like I said, I think she's more technical, but you know, she does. It's going to be a range issue here because she's fighting mostly boxing, whereas Shauna's going to be using mostly her legs. So it's a real iffy deal. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm going to lean with Sam Hughes in this one. I do think she's the more technical fighter, but I could see a world where Shauna is able to use her kicks and kind of keep Sam at bay to some extent and ultimately edge out a decision or something. So I don't have a ton of confidence in that, but I do think that Sam is the more technical fighter of the two. Now, when we move on to the next fight, we have Rinat Fakhretdinov going against Andreas Gustafsson, and this is another really interesting fight because I think that in my head it was maybe a bit different than when I actually filmed it or taped these guys. But anyways, let's hop over to Rinat and see what this guy has to offer. See if he's even here. Doesn't look like it. Let's pull this guy up. Alright, Rinat. Kind of the bad thing about this. Cute. Alright. I will try to get myself out of here. Alright. Rinat, this dude is a flat-footed pressure striker. He's fairly aggressive, doesn't move back much. Boxing is quite loose. He has a decent guard, decent left jab, but, you know, he throws a lot of heavy overhand, wide punches, overhand right. Throws a solid front side, low kick, aggressive wrestling style. You know, he comes from a legit Sambo background, so he does have some legit wrestling. But, you know, we've seen it not be as effective against higher level competition, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes. Now, heavy ground and pound, you know, and he's an opportunistic grappler. So this is a guy that, you know, he's just not as technical as I thought he was on the feet, but he has legit power, and if he catches you with one of those, a right cross or an overhand, something like that, you know, he has the power to really put people down. We've seen it in the past. But he's a guy that he'll shoot the takedowns. He's a bit kind of like, maybe it's not fair to say like Chimaev, but, you know, a bit, you know, he's got pretty nice shot, and you know, like I said, maybe not the best comparison, but it did remind me of him just a little bit. And he's looking to just kind of maul you. He's looking to maul you, get you down, work some ground and pound, control ground and pound. And, if the submission shows its face, yeah, he'll take it. But, he's just as willing to take the ground and pound victory as well. So, my question is with him is when we pull this guy up, you will see that in his more recent fights, decision, split, decision, well, that was grappling, decision against Brian Battle, he's not this great finisher that, we once thought he was. And some people say he arguably lost that last fight. He may have, I don't know. We won't get into that. But all in all, that is kind of the type of fighter he is. That's what he wants to do. And I think ultimately for me, when I'm breaking down their skill sets and everything, I'm trying to see what they're good at, what they're bad at, how they fight, and there's certain things like, their footwork, for an example. It tells me a lot, their footwork correlates a lot to, their range management, their ability to defend takedowns. There's a lot of things that these things correlate to. So, him being flat-footed, not the most technical striker, just kind of really relies on his power and his takedown. And then when you go to a guy like his opponent, Gustafsson, this guy's just, he'll say it himself. He's like a berserker. He's not trying to really use, like, his strategy is just to literally walk you down, overwhelm you. Let's pull his notes up. Alright, this guy, he's an aggressive, plodding striker. He's not technical at range. He crashes the pocket with wide looping punches. Now, pause. I did notice that he actually does have a pretty nice jab. He just doesn't fight that way. He doesn't fight with that type of game plan. I did see it, though. I've seen glimpses of it. He does have a nice jab. He just doesn't really fight that way. The guy's strong. He has solid clinch work. He uses knees, elbows, and he's a bit of a madman. This guy will strike from about any position. If he can throw a punch, he will. He can be taken down. He'll work to get up, but, I've seen him give up his back. And that worries me a bit. But honestly, this is what I think. I'll say this. My lean in this is actually Gustafsson. And the reason that is because this guy is like a tireless worker. And he'll fight the same way the whole fight mostly. You know what I mean? Like, just a real gritty guy. But in all fairness, Rinat's been to decision quite a few times. And even though he does seem to fade just a bit towards the back end of the fight, he does fight through typically. So he's not a guy that's going to tire out and give out or whatever. But the other thing about this that was in my mind was that I've never felt like I needed to see a weigh-in more than this fight. Obviously I think it's important, but this fight particularly, I was like, I really want to see them next to each other, because I think that the telling factor for these guys is because of their styles and how they're going to fight each other. Is the stronger guy's probably going to win this fight. You know what I mean? If Gustafsson can put this guy up against the cage and maul him, he's going to win the fight. If Rinat's able to take this guy down, a few times during the fight, he's probably going to win this fight. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how these size up. I've not looked at weigh-ins. I've not looked at odds. I've not looked at literally anything outside of just trying to break these fighters down. But yeah, I think that that's a really, really important thing in this fight for me. I am going to go with Gustafsson in this. I think that, he's just going to be able to kind of just outwork him. But let me see the weigh-ins. Our pick's Gustafsson, all right? And then we'll move on to the next fight. The next fight, we have Brad Tavares going against Robert Bryczek. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation for that guy's name. I'm going to go ahead and guess it's probably not. But, maybe we got lucky on that. Now, this is a pretty fun fight. I think I did see that Brad was a fairly big favorite. Yeah, I did kind of see that on this one. I wasn't looking for it. I just kind of seen it. And yeah, I don't know. I think Robert can win this. But let's go to the breakdowns and see what that tells us. All right, Brad Tavares. This guy is a flat-footed striker. He shows a bit of bounce, decent footwork with some evasive ability. He's pretty technical kickboxing style. He has a high guard, solid left jab, nice front side and back side low kicks, a heavy side kick, and a decent front kick. Speed looks a touch slow, and sometimes he's too willing to go second. I don't like that. Takedown defense is pretty solid, decent sprawl, heavy hips, will dig underhooks. There's a lot to like about his takedown defense, and his get-up game is pretty solid. Now, I don't even remember the other fool's name. Robert. Let's check this guy out. Let's pull up Robert and see what kind of stuff we can find out about him. Robert. Here he is. All right. Fairly light-footed. Shows good bounce, solid footwork, and uses measured pressure and range management. Oh, I don't want that. All right. Boxing looks pretty nice. He has a nice left jab, heavy right cross. Tends to throw heavy when committing to combinations. He does tend to keep his head on the center line, which is not a great thing. And he can be outpaced, which I don't love either. Ground game is a bit unknown. I don't see this being on the mat. It's a tough one. I just think that Robert has a good chance of winning this. It says that he can be outpaced, but I don't think he's going to be as willing to go second. And that, for me, that was kind of the big thing in this fight. I think they match up pretty well. I think it's a pretty solid fight all in all. Skill for skill, they're kind of similar, but I think that Robert's going to have a little bit better footwork, and he's going to be willing to do a little bit more. And just the fact that he commits to his punches as well, I think that he could really win moments. He has an opportunity to win minutes, and he has an opportunity to win moments in this fight. So I see him probably winning this fight. I don't know that he'll knock out Tavares. Tavares has proven to be pretty durable over his career, but I do think this guy's got the power to do it. Yeah, I guess he's got 5 knockout losses. Now, I don't see Tavares knocking out him. Let's see. Knocked out to Gregory Rodriguez. I mean, there's really no shame in that. Bruno Silva, same thing. That dude hits like a truck. Edmund Shabazian head kick. Yeah, there's no shame in that. I mean, so 3 of those. Robert Whitaker. I mean, most of these knockouts are to pretty high-level guys, or at least guys that have, they're real knockout artists. So there's not a lot of shame in some of his knockout losses. And so even though he does have 5 knockout losses, I still stand by the fact that he is pretty durable, all in all. But this guy's got 11 knockouts, only been knocked out once. Yeah, he's not fought the same type of competition. He did lose to Ihor Potieria, which I think is a wash out of the UFC. But let's not kid ourselves. Potieria was actually a pretty good striker. Honestly, probably a better striker than Brad. Maybe not the better fighter, but just pure striking. Better footwork, quicker hands. a little bit more aggressive, willing to go. So, losing a decision to that. Yeah, I really think that Robert can win this fight. And so I'm going to lean with Robert on this one. And I'll say, I mean, you could play it. I don't mind playing just the money. Like, I don't mind the money line on it, but even you could just even consider, finish no action on Robert. Because I don't think Brad's going to finish Robert. But, Robert being, plus 180 dog or whatever he actually currently is, I don't know. I don't mind that. Now, next fight we have Sam Patterson going against Trey Waters. These guys are pretty big for the division. Let's check them out. Sam Patterson. Alright, Sam Patterson. This guy is a fairly light-footed striker. Shows a bit of bounce, solid footwork with some range management. He has a nice backside teep kick. He will also throw it low to the side. Let me clarify what I actually put there, because I know that can be confusing the way I wrote that. But, he will throw that same backside kick low into the side. So, obviously, it's not a teep kick. But, anyways, he pumps a left jab more as a range feeler and then throws the right cross. Can be pressured into the cage. Takedown defense seems pretty spotty. Pretty aggressive defensive grappler, especially front chokes. And so he'll use that to, kind of keep himself from being controlled or whatever. He uses it defensively, and it works. And he gets him locked in quite a bit. He just doesn't finish him a lot. So I kind of question his ability to finish those chokes. But they look pretty good. So it's probably only a matter of time before he pulls one of those offs. But he does have the ability, when you go to this guy and see his record, I think he's got quite a few submissions. It's just not like he'll lock up that Dars quite a bit. He just doesn't actually get it. But I don't know that he has a single one on here. Got the guillotine, rear naked, guillotine. Yeah, he doesn't actually even have a single one of those chokes finished on his record. But in my opinion, it's really only a matter of time before he does. And watching his tape, I was actually really impressed with Sam Patterson. I've watched him fight before and everything. But, as I've said before, now that I kind of break down the fights, I really look at the fighters, what they're doing and stuff. I'm like, wow, this guy's a much better fighter than I think I even realized, because I think his last fight was against Danny Barlow, and I picked Barlow to win that fight just because of the hype around him and, blah, 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 blah. But then when I go back and look at, Sam's ability to actually fight now, and I'm not comparing it to Danny because I didn't really do that, but, just looking at it now, I'm like, hey, man, this guy's a lot better than I gave him credit for before that fight. And so like now seeing it and breaking it down, yeah, I think he's a pretty good fighter. All in all, he looks pretty good. There's some things he could clean up, but all in all, I think he's a pretty good fighter. And then when we look at his opponent, which is Trey, let's pull him up. Trey. All right. Trey is a fairly light-footed striker. He shows a bit of bounce, but tends to be pretty plotty. He has a snappy frontside low kick and a decent backside low kick. Solid left jab with a solid right crossover / overhand. So he'll throw either or. He does carry his hands low, and he can be low volume. I have a lot of questions on his ground game, but seems to be quick to the guillotine when shot on. It's funny because it's different, but it's very similar to Sam in the fact that, he'll use these chokes defensively when somebody's trying to wrestle or, you know, grapple with him or whatever. Now, I came away with this feeling like Sam was... All in all, I'm not like overly impressed with Trey Waters. He's definitely got great size for the division. He's got some, you know, I don't like his low volume. You know, his inability. Well, it's not inability, but his just willingness to just kind of stand there. I didn't really like a lot of that stuff. And so because of that, I'm going to lean with Sam Patterson in this fight. I think that he's just more refined, in my opinion. And I think that, you know, in how I break it down, I think his process of fighting and striking is just better than Trey's. And I do see this being a striking matchup. So I'm going to go with our boy Sam Patterson. And let's pull these guys up on Tapology just real quick. Let's see. It's 13-2 against 9-1. Sam's been fighting a little bit better competition all in all. Been in the UFC for 4 fights. Beat some, you know, like Danny Barlow. I still think he's a pretty legit guy. Johan Linus or whatever his name was. He was, you know, he's okay. He's more of just a power puncher or whatever, but, you know, fought, you know, all that schmooze. And so, you know, you look at that. I think that's one of the things that bothered me when I looked at him last time, is knowing that he got knocked out and thinking that, you know, maybe this guy had a questionable chin, you know, and maybe he does, but I think that's the only time he was knocked out. Nope, guess not. I lied. He's been knocked out 2 times. But the big difference between Yanal Ashmus and Trey Waters is this dude's highly aggressive, you know what I mean? And he had to throw a flurry of punches before he got to him. And I just don't think Trey's going to do that. Maybe he will. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I just don't see it. I really don't see it. Yeah. Let's pull up our other guy real quick. I don't like that. Trey Waters. Yeah, and Trey Waters hasn't really fought that many good fighters. 2 guys in the LFA. I don't think either of those guys are very good. Oh, I guess well, no. Yeah, just all in all, like I said, I watched it, and I just really wasn't that impressed with this guy. He is really, really tall, though. I mean, 6'5", 170 pounds. Dude's got great size and all. Maybe he can pull it out, but I'm going to lean with Sam Patterson. I think he gets the job done, and he's probably the favorite. Yeah, he's at -180. I think that's probably right. Now, Fernandes, I have no idea how to pronounce this guy's name. I'm going to give it a try. Is it Kauê? Kauê? I don't know. I shouldn't even try. I should have just left Fernandes. Harry Hardwick. This is a short notice replacement. Let's dive into it. Let's see what we think about these guys. All right. Fernandes. All right. Fernandes is a light-footed striker. He shows good bounce, solid footwork, and range management. He has a bladed stance. He has a diverse kicking attack. His kicks are lightning fast. That might be an exaggeration, but he does have really quick kicks. I don't really love his guard. You know, he extends the lead hand and leaves the right hand a bit low. He has a solid left jab, nice right cross. Takedown defense looks solid. He has a nice sprawl. He has a nasty high kick off the break. I've seen this dude land this multiple times and hurt and drop and knock out of people. So I don't think it's a fluke deal. I think it's the real deal. It's not a fluke deal. It's the real deal. Fernandes has a nasty high kick off the break. That's a thing. So keep your eye out for that. And then when we go to his opponent, we have Harry. Oh, so Harry. All right. Harry Hardwick. This guy's a fairly light-footed striker. He shows some bounce with solid footwork. Switches stances seamlessly. He has solid range management. Fights with good pace and pressure. Fundamentally sound boxing. He has a high guard, pretty clean 1-2, below average speed and power. Throws a nice backside teep kick. Well-timed step-in knee. Will utilize Muay Thai clinch also. Opportunistic grappler. Good blend of ground and pound. Nice backside take to rear naked choke. Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about Harry, like in some capacity, because I think he does a lot of good things. I don't love that he doesn't have good power, or his speed seems a touch slow. Like, those are things that I don't really love about him. But he seemed like he was pretty tough, and he seems like he's the type of guy that, he's almost like, he's one of those guys that almost reminds you as like a gritty guy. Like, you would think of more of a wrestler, a guy that wears you down. But he almost does it with his striking and whatnot. And so I like him. I do like him. I think this is a really, really tough spot for him, though, because I think Fernandes... Let's pull up Fernandes, because there is some questions I have about this guy. Like, how well does he show up later in fights? How many times has he been to decision? Okay, he is 3-2 to decision. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to, like, wrestle him or whatever. I don't know if Mark DeCasey done that, but, that was a split decision. Yeah, I don't know. I think, like I said, ultimately, I think it's a really, really tough spot for Hardwick. But I think he's tough, and I think he has a lot to offer. And I'm not going to be surprised if he comes in here and somehow edges out, like a late finish or a decision win. I think he's, like I said, he's a gritty fighter. He seems to be pretty tough. But with that being said, I still got to go with Fernandes. I think Fernandes, this is his fight to lose. So I think Fernandes walks away with the win here. Let's pull up Hardwick real quick. He has lost 3 fights. Never been knocked out. Yeah, he's never fought anyone like this guy either, though, I'm telling you. Yeah. I'm gonna go with Fernandes, but I wonder what the odds are on this fight. Hey, it's reasonably close. I mean, for a short notice replacement, they must think pretty highly of this guy. I mean, he is at home. I think, no, that's England. So anyways, I think he's a good fighter. I think he'll be a welcome addition to the UFC. I think he can win a lot of fights. I just think he's going to struggle with, some of the top guys. But he could certainly prove me wrong. That's a fun fight. I like that fight. But anyways, we're going Fernandes. Let's move on. Marcin Tybura going against Antti Daleya. And this is a rematch. These guys fought, before Tybura. I think, as a matter of fact, I think the fight before Tybura got to the UFC was against this guy. Now, you know, dude shattered his leg, you know what I mean, broke his leg, and that was a wrap. So, you know, on the record, Tybura got the knockout win or whatever, but, you know, I don't know that he was actually winning that fight, you know, so I don't want to take anything from him. You know, he ultimately won that fight, I suppose, but, you know, this will be an interesting matchup. Let's look at their notes. Marcin, here we go. This guy's a fairly light-footed striker. You wouldn't think so. He's a bit of a, you know, he's a heavyweight, but, you know, he shows a bit of bounce with decent movement and footwork. He does lack range management, but striking is fairly fundamental. He has a high guard, decent left jab to overhand right. He does seem a bit slow and will extend himself at times. Decent left high and side kick. Has shown some takedown ability, and if he gets the fight to the mat, he has solid top pressure, relentless ground and pound, and he's an opportunistic grappler. And then when we go to his opponent, I don't know if that's right, but yep. Delia is a flat-footed pressure striker. Doesn't move backwards much. Carries a fairly high guard. Pumps a left jab, looking to set up power shots with his right. He is a violent puncher. Will work from the clinch, mostly cage push. Seems to have some takedown ability with violent ground and pound. Yeah. It's a tough one to call. Really, in my opinion, it's really tough to call. I don't think that Delia throws as many kicks after the injury. You know, I'm not sure. I didn't watch, like, all his fights. I didn't follow his career. But, you know, I did see some of his fights, like PFL or whatever, after the injury. This is more recently. Good fighter. But, yeah. Definitely wasn't throwing nearly as many kicks. I don't know. I don't really have a strong lead on these. Are heavyweights. Heavyweight fights are always really, really tough. Delia looked like the better guy on the feet in their original matchup. Let's look. Yeah, for me that fight's pretty tough to call. Let's. I don't know. I'd see him at weigh-ins. You know, I already know that Delia is weighing in obviously a lot lighter than Tybura. It'd be interesting to see what other people think about these two as well. I think that I just don't know. I just don't know. I think Tybura can probably edge it out, but it's a really tough fight to call, and they're heavyweights. These are guys. I mean, heavyweight fights are so volatile. I don't like really trying to pick, or I mean, it depends obviously on the fight, but you know, like in this case, I don't really love trying to pick out of these two, especially when Delia's new to the UFC. You know, there's still a lot of questions around this guy, in my opinion. And I know he's not like a spring chicken or whatever. He's probably on the back end of his career, but I just think there's a ton of questions around this guy. And Marcin has shown the ability to get takedowns, you know, and show that aggressive ground and pound submission skill set. I think that he's better on the feet than a lot of people probably even give him credit for. You know, a lot of people probably don't even realize that his striking is as good as it is. Like, I would say from a technical standpoint, like, he's probably the better striker. He's just not got as much. I mean, he's a heavyweight, but he doesn't, like, the other guy's a violent puncher. He's gonna, like, put a lot behind his punches. He's gonna try to knock you out. Tybor is probably, you know, he's a bit slow, but he's the bigger guy too. I'm gonna lean with Marcin, but I ain't confident in this fight. Let's just be real. I mean, anything could happen. It'd be a fun fight to watch, so I'll enjoy watching it, and we'll just see how it plays out. Now, Omar Sy and Brinson Ribeiro. These guys, I already had notes on them. We're going to go over them. I'm going to say right now, they're probably a bit outdated, but I thought that they were sufficient, especially since this is all last second anyways. So I went ahead and ran with it. Now, let's pull these guys up. All right. Omar. This guy's a light-footed striker. Tends to move straight back, though. Very green striker. Decent left jab, right cross. Carries his hands low and turns his head and kind of reaches to fin punches. Wants to wrestle. He will chain. He has decent entries. Solid double leg. He kind of lacks top pressure, though. His top pressure is not very good. It's okay, but not great. Has some ground and pound with a bit of submission upside. And on the other side of it, okay. All right. Brinson. Light-footed striker. He has fast hands, good power. Throws wild and reckless. Submission over position. And a questionable chin. Yeah, very little I have on him. This is a kill-or-be-killed fighter. This fight, in my opinion, probably, well, most of the time when I have an aggressive fighter, I almost automatically think it's not going to go to the cards. But in this case, I'm not going to say it's not, but let's look at Omar. Because I think this guy has a lot of hype. You know, the physique and everything he done before he got to the UFC looks great. But I don't know that he's all that. I don't really like his striking. That's the thing that kind of bothers me about him. I feel like he's just very green, untested in a lot of places. You know, he's one of those guys that great hammer. He was a great hammer outside the UFC, just you know, kicking a lot of butt and finishing people. KO, you're naked. You know, a lot of those are take you down, wrestle you, ground and pound you, and look for the, you know, submission rear naked choke. That's kind of what he does. He could certainly do it here. I'm gonna say this fight probably doesn't go to the cards. Probably doesn't get out of round 2. Let's see. Maybe it does though. Let's look at old Ribeiro. What his last fight do? Oh yeah, he fought Mirzakana. Oh yeah, that's. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this one I'm going to say, I think this fight doesn't go to the cards, and I actually am going to favor Ribeiro in this because the fight starts on the feet. He's a pretty well-versed grappler. You know, you can see right here, he's only got 2 submission losses. So I don't think that he's going to get submitted necessarily. That's not to say he can't be, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. And I just think that he has a really good chance of, you know, maybe, I don't know. I should have watched more film on this just to kind of see, you know, what his footwork's like. Because I think that if he can maintain range for a while and keep it on the feet for a little bit, Sai's not got the best cardio. And I could see him, I mean, and that's kind of his path to victory, right, is the wrestling ground and pound submission. He's not winning this fight on the feet. I mean, he could knock him out because these are big boys, but I just think generally, or like most of the time, he's not winning this fight on the feet. I think Ribeiro probably wins this fight on the feet. Even though I don't think he's like super technical, I think he's more skilled on the feet. So, yeah, I'm going to take Ribeiro on this, but I think ultimately the way to look at it is like fight just doesn't go. Probably the under 1.5 even doesn't reach round 3, maybe even in the first round. That's the way I look at this fight mostly, but I think Ribeiro's got more paths to victory than C does. So I'm going to go with him. This should be a fun fight, should be exciting, should just be like, you know, quick. Somebody's going to look like a huge favorite, and we move on to the next. Next fight, we have William Gomis going against Robert Rushala, and I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation because I never even heard his name. You know, honestly, no disrespect to even him, but like I was having a hard time like even being engaged in his fights. I don't know. Maybe I was missing something, but I wasn't necessarily loving it. But let's pull up Gomis. Gomis is a fairly light-footed striker, shows decent bounce with some footwork. He does tend to be pretty plotty and backs himself up to the cage. He's a fairly explosive striker. I say that, I probably should reward that because, like, I don't know. I think he is, but it's not usually how I would word it. But anyways, he does have snappy backside kicks. He high and side kick. He does carry his hands low. I don't love that. He tends to throw wide power punches. Don't love that. He's a bit low volume. Don't love that. He's a decent clinch player, you know, solid knees with some dirty boxing, ability to slip under punches and get to the back. He does have a bit of takedown ability, seems to scramble okay, and is a bit more aggressive on the mat. So Gomis is a kind of a weird fighter because he has just enough bounce and just enough footwork to usually keep his opponents at bay, and then he will kind of sometimes set and wait, counter with his hands a little bit. And he stays just safe enough. And keeps it close enough that he wins fights, split decisions. Let's pull up this guy's resume or his, yeah. I'm telling you, it's just his fighting style is, I think he could be so much better than what he actually is too, because he has a pretty nice skill set. You know, good athleticism. I think he's got a fairly long frame for the division. Yeah, 6 foot at 145. He does. He's pretty long. Seven knockouts, no losses, 1 submission win. 1 loss, 6 decisions, 2 decision losses. And then when you look at it, the Heider and Male, split decision loss. Joe Anderson Brito, split decision win. Gamori, body kick knockout in the 3rd round. Francis Marshall, split decision. Jarno Evans, majority decision. And then before it was, that was an Aries, ground and pound in the 3rd round. Ground and pound. Guillotine, decision. Anyways, you get the point. Now, this will be interesting because his opponent in here is not like a lot of these other guys. He's not a Joe Anderson Brito. He's not a Francis Marshall or Jarno Evans or Aarons or Heider Emil. I mean, he's like none of these guys. He's probably a lot more like these other guys down here, if I had to guess. But let's pull him up. Let's see what his name is, because I don't know. Robert. Yeah, Robert. Okay, Robert, where are you, buddy? Where are you, Robert? Robbery, that's what I just spelled. You see that? Maybe not correctly, but... Alright. Robert. Light-footed striker. Decent bounce with quite a bit of evasive movement. Yeah, he kind of moves back and laterally around the cage a lot. Fights behind a kick-heavy attack. Nice right low kick and push kick. Decent left side kick and high kick. Decent left jab. He does keep his head on the center line. I don't like that. Ooh. You always gotta love this. Let's get back to business. Doesn't seem to strike well off the back flip. And then his ground game is just, like, I guess I don't have anything on that. Or maybe he didn't save it. I feel like I had something. I had to have had something. But nonetheless, we're going to have a ton of questions on this guy's ground game. I know I had something because I know that I put, this guy seems to do, these guys are a lot alike too. He seems to do okay in the clinch. I think he's got decent power, but he spends a lot of time moving back. Now, I think this is a hard fight to gauge because I don't know I have no idea who actually wants to go first in this fight. I have no idea. So, I don't know. I'm going to take Gomis. I think that Gomis... Now, I think for sure this fight, if I had to guess, is going to go over. That's what I feel pretty confident in, is this fight goes over. This fight starts round 2. I feel pretty darn confident in that, And then even there's a chance this is a split decision. A real chance, I mean... These guys are going to be run away from each other. These guys are going to be like on the outside of one side of the octagon, and one will be on the other side, and these guys will just be doing circles around it, not even fighting, just dancing. So it'll be really, really interesting to see how this fight plays out. But I think that the over is like the best way to look at it, in my opinion. We're just going to move on. Axel Sola. We have another. This is a debut fighter going against Rhys McKee. This is one of the first fights I feel like. I was like the second fight I broke down on this card. Let's pull him up. Axel. All right. Axel is a light-footed pressure striker. He has decent movement with some range management. Bladed stance, solid 1-2, likes to throw backside low kick and side kick. Can strike off his back foot, willing to work in the clinch, good elbow, solid knees, body lock throws. Seems to be pretty sound grappler. Scrambles well, position over submission with decent ground and pound. I don't know why I got of, but I'll fix that later. Yeah, he seems like a pretty legit fighter, all in all. Like I said, it's been a while since I watched the tape, and I've not watched this guy fight before, so I'm not like super familiar with him. But you know, the notes are telling me he's a pretty good fighter. You know, I put some. You know, I always put that in the parentheses. You know, the some, because I want that to stick out. That he does have some range management. It's not like he has great, but he does have good movement overall. He just doesn't maintain range that well. Bladed stance, probably susceptible to leg kicks. But you know, pretty technical striking. You know, the solid 1-2, throws backside low kick, side kick, can strike off so he counters well off the back foot. Willing to work in the clinch. Well, yeah, I mean, he seems like he's a pretty solid fighter everywhere this goes. And then let's pull up Rhys. Where in your stuff's at? I don't even know. I don't know if it's HY or YH. HY, okay. Alright. This guy's a fairly light-footed striker. He shows a bit of bounce with decent footwork and some range management. Same thing. Fights behind a solid left jab. Doesn't have very good head movement. He has slow reaction. Strings together combinations pretty well in the pocket. Will use elbows. Carries good power. Takedown defense looks pretty bad. He will work, but doesn't have very good get-up game. Defensive grappler defensive grappling is in question. Yeah, you know, I mean, the notes tell you everything you need to know, especially like how I feel about the fight. I think Axel wins this fight. I think that if he can implement some grappling, get this fight to the ground, which he's shown that he can do, I think that he has success in this fight. Now, he is a newcomer. Rhys McKee's a pretty tough customer all in all. I don't think he's a bad fighter. I just think he has a hole in his game with the grappling and whatnot. So, and then I think that, technically speaking, I think that Axel's competent on the feet. Like, he's a good striker himself. So I don't see this being like a wash on the feet where like McKee's just. But McKee does have pretty good power. He definitely does have pretty good power. So there is a world that he could knock this dude out. But let's look at Axel, because I think I did see him knocked down once. I seen him deal with a bit of adversity, I believe. Let's see, but never lost. This guy's never lost. So, he's, and he's champion in Aries, right? Is that right? Yeah. Fought some fairly legit dudes. Yeah, I think this guy, he can win a lot of ways, and I just favor him to win this fight. Let's see. Yeah, I think he should be the favorite, and that's a pretty good line, I mean, I don't mind that. So we're going to go with Axel Sola on this. I think he's winning that fight. Now we're going to move on to Bolaji going against Mason Jones. Okay, baby. Okay. Let's check it out. Okay. Here we are. Bolaji. This is another one where these notes were a little bit outdated, but I thought they were pretty good. I know they could be updated because my notes have improved, you know what I mean? I look at other things now, so I'm constantly trying to improve. So I know that going back, I'm like, yeah, this isn't quite where I want it to be, but it was pretty sufficient. Flat-footed striker. He has technical boxer. Explosive athlete with KO power. Has a snappy low kick he will add at the end of his combinations. He has decent takedown defense. He sprawls pretty well, but he can be taken down. When he will work to get up. One of the things I like about his striking is he crowds hurt opponents and uses knees to help get the finish. So I like that. There was a fight a while back. Oh, yeah, it was Carlos Prates against, why am I blinking? I can't think of his name. Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and worry about it. But anyways, people were talking about that fight and saying, like, oh, this guy's super durable, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but, the difference with some of these fighters is, when you're willing to go to the body, you invest into the body, it doesn't matter, if your chin holds up, sometimes your body won't. And so I do like that Bolaji goes to the body. But anyways, let's look at his opponent, Mason, on the other side. Mason Jones. I believe his last fight was against Jeremy Stevenson. I got to watch that fight. Mason Jones, he's a flat-footed pressure striker. Sets a high pace with good output. Has solid wrestling, but he does lack great control. But he can chain wrestle. And he hasn't shown finishing ability at the highest level. When you dig through his record, you see that he had quite a few finishes earlier in his career. But, those were against lower level competition. And so you see that as he's moved up in competition, his ability to get the finishes has deteriorated. He's not getting the finishes he used to get. And that's been okay because he has been able to use his pace and pressure and wrestling to secure wins. So let's pull this guy up and see who he's fought. He's fought some pretty good guys. He really has. Let's pull this up. First of all, 7 knockouts, no knockout losses. Never been finished. This guy's never been finished. Submissions, 3-0, and then he's got 6-2 on decision. So, like I said, well-rounded guy. Decision against Jeremy Stevens. Stevens didn't really look very good in that fight, but he still hits hard. You see Bryce Logan finished him in Cage Warriors. Let's see. Lost to Ludovic Klein. Ludovic Klein's a monster. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he got worked by Gamrot, but whatever on that. Ludovic Klein's still a killer. David Onama, another one, is a killer. You know what I mean? Like, he's has some lapses, but David's a super tough customer that will come back to win fights. So, him getting that win is pretty impressive. Fought Mike Davis. Mike Davis is another good, really, really skilled fighter. He's fought some good guys. His first little run in the UFC was tough guys, real tough guys. Some of those guys weren't as well known then as they are now, but now it's like, who they are, and you're like, well, yeah, those are all really, really good, really, really good fighters. Anywho, just thought I'd pull that up. And then let's look at Bolaji. Yeah. All right. So he lost to Chris Duncan via guillotine. Now, this is kind of my assessment of all this. Is this guy's never been knocked out either. He has been submitted, and he's only lost one decision. So the way I think this fight's going to play out is you're going to see right away that Bolaji Oki is the far superior athlete. He's going to be bigger, stronger, faster, hit harder, all of it. I mean, he's just going to be far superior. And I think that he's going to be the more technical striker as well. And the big difference I see in this is, or, Mason Jones, like, kind of path to victory would be to probably wrestle and stuff, but I don't know. I don't think that I think that Bolaji should be the rightful favorite in this. I don't know if he is, but I do think he should be the favorite. And I could see him getting a knockout. But I don't know that's the safest look, but I could see him getting a knockout. Just if he invests into the body, I could see him getting a knockout. There might be a good line on it just because Jones has never been knocked out. And let's look at the... He's an underdog. He's an underdog. The thing is Mason, like I said, he hasn't shown the ability to get the finishes at the highest level. Whereas, like, say, Chris Duncan has. So if you want to kind of give yourself an idea, like a concept, like Chris Duncan can get finishes. And also Chris Duncan hits really hard. Way harder than Mason Jones. Well, I shouldn't say way, but, you know, significantly harder than Mason Jones. Like, I don't see Mason Jones putting people away in the UFC. Duncan can. And so Bolaji made a mistake by going for a takedown and putting his head in the wrong place. And, you know, and against the wrong person at that, because Duncan has shown the ability to get the guillotine. He's got a tight squeeze. He's got a couple of them on the record. So, yeah, I think Bolaji wins his fight. I just think that he wins his fight by either knockout or decision. I think either or, knockout or decision. I'm going with Oki to win this fight, and then we're going to move on. We have Modestas Bukauskas, and he's going against Paul Craig. Paul Craig is... I thought this dude retired, honestly. I thought he retired after his last fight. I may be wrong, but that's what I was thinking. Let's pull up Modestas. Let's pull up his notes. Modestas. We'll just go modest. Modest. Modestas Bukauskas. Alright, this guy is a light-footed kickboxer, white stance, has solid kicks, but tends to be more of a counter-striker. He has good speed and solid power, doesn't fight well off his back foot, and drops his guard when entering the pocket. Doesn't seem to have good get-up game. Let's see, hold on, let me look at this real quick. Yeah, I don't know. These were some other notes that I know are a little bit outdated, so I'll definitely be looking to update them as the fights go. I'll be looking at some of these different aspects of their game that I find important to my notes, and I'll be adding them as the fights go tomorrow. But I'm going to make do with what we have here, and then we're going to go look at Craig. Paul Craig is a light-footed striker. He has a solid side kick, but tends to throw them naked. Lacks good footwork. You know, almost seems to kind of close his eyes when a punch is thrown at his face. Don't love that. Violent ground and pound. Will pull guard, and this dude has, you know, pretty high or big submission upside. You know, the thing about Paul Craig is this guy actually has a pretty good kicking skill set, and he just doesn't utilize it the way he should. I think that if he did, he would be a little bit better. But, you know, what do you do about it? I don't know. I see it, and I'm like, yo, man, you need to utilize this. You need to, you know, work with what you got. But, yeah, I think it's, you know, it's a volatile fight, mostly just because Craig could, you know, pull a victory right out of his but at any time, he's done it time and time again. I don't mind the guy. I like his intensity and stuff, and I think he's quite the character. But, Modestas is actually a guy I've liked for a long time. I think he came out of Cage Warriors. I didn't really watch him there, but I feel like he had a stint in the UFC before, left, and then came back. Or I may be wrong about that. But I think he's a pretty good fighter. All in all, like his striking and stuff is better than a lot of guys in the, well, I say that it's better than a lot of guys in the light heavyweight division, but that's probably more just in the past, a little ways back. But I do think that he was a little bit ahead of his time. His striking skill set's pretty solid. But he does have holes in his game. The ground game obviously being a bit of one, but I don't know. I think this ultimately comes down to whether Modestas can maintain range, keep it on the feet, not let Craig, pull him to the ground, pull guard, and because that could be a real problem for him. But we seen Bo Nickel, just keeping on the feet with Paul Craig and beat him up. But Bo Nickel has the wrestling and stuff to kind of prevent the takedowns and kind of, stuff like that. I'm going to take Modestas to win this fight. I think that he can win it. But, like I said, it's a volatile fight all in all. Let's look at the line. Let's see. He's been submitted only one time, which is certainly encouraging. Let's look at Paul Craig. "13 submissions." Yeah, I mean, he's had a tough run lately, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that, you gotta either be somebody that wants to go to the ground, I don't know. Some of these guys, you got to be willing grappler almost. For an example, Andre Muniz. Willing grappler because his BJJ's just as good, if not better, right? So he's competent there. He doesn't feel that threatened, and then what happens is, you get ground and pounded because, they're big guys, and if you can get on top of somebody and you got vicious, kind of relentless ground and pound, yeah, it only takes a few. And then honestly, if you're not responding well or reacting in the way you should, the ref will call it. So I'm not saying that's exactly what happened in that fight because, I can't really remember exactly. I didn't watch that recently. But just for an example, I'm just saying that that can easily happen. So I think, again, the way this fight's going to play out is if Modestas is able to keep the fight on the feet, he's going to be the more technical, superior striker. And how many times has Paul Craig been knocked out? 5. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just going to say Modestas probably wins this, but not super duper confident in that. And I don't really feel confident in a method on it either. I just think that he should win the fight. But as I said, Craig could pull the win out of his, pocket or butt or whatever. So we'll see what happens in this fight, and we're going to move on. We have the co-main event Benoît, Saint Denis going against Mauricio, Ruffy. This is a pretty fun fight, and this is a fight, it's a tale of two tapes. You know, you have the grappler on the left, you have the striker on the right. I mean, it's just very, very evident who these guys are and what they want to do, right? Benoît is a very kind of just aggressive bully brawler, like, whereas Mauricio he's a tactician. You know, he's a guy that doesn't waste many punches. So let's pull these gentlemen up and see what we think. Here's Benoît. Benoît is a flat-footed striker. He has solid, heavy leg kick, powerful 1-2, has a bully style in wrestling, and clinch positions. He's very strong. Nasty elbows in the clinch. Throws wide in the pocket, looks to finish fights. Yeah, I mean, he's been able to maul a lot of people. And I'll be interested to see how these guys size up too, because Benoît usually looks quite a bit bigger than most guys. And I know that Mauricio's a pretty big guy himself, so I am interested to see how these two size up. And then when we go to the other side, Mauricio is a fairly light-footed striker. He tends to be pretty plotty, but he does show good bounce and solid range management. That's not very typical. You don't usually see people that are as flat-footed as he can be at times and still able to react and have that evasive or that bounce back like he does. He is able to maintain his range even though he tends to plant his feet quite a bit. But I have noticed that it seems like more recently he has been a little bit more light-footed, a little bit more on his toes. So, you know, I'll definitely be looking for that in the fight. But he's a precise striker. He doesn't waste many. You know, this guy blends his striking pretty well. He has a nice left jab, you know, power right cross, powerful. Has a nice lead uppercut with the right he likes to throw as well. He's got a diverse kicking game. You know, he throws a really solid, like, strong teep kick. Nice low kick, nice side kick, spinning heel kick. But this guy does kind of carry his hands low. Takedown defense seems solid. You know, you're always going to have that question against who. But, you know, he seems to sprawl pretty well, and he seems to have pretty good balance. So I do like what I see as far as how most of that goes. Yeah, this is like I said, this is a tale of two tapes. You know what I mean? You got the grinder, the mauler, the you know, the ones with grapple, and then you got this striker on the other side. And I think it's pretty tough, but I'm gonna side with Ruffy, and there's a couple reasons why. One, we've seen, you know, reference the question I just said about the takedown defense. Okay, yes, those questions are certainly there, and it'll be very interesting to see if Benoît can get this fight to the ground. Okay, I think there's a chance, you know, he probably could. I mean, that's, you know, that we're going to find out. But what we do know that we don't even really have to question is Benoît can be knocked out. This is a fact. You know, we've seen it already. Let's pull these guys up. You know, Dustin Poirier knocked him out, right? Granted, he was kind of smoking the dude, but let's check this out. Been knocked out twice. Yeah. Moicano, doctor stoppage. Dustin Poirier, right hook. That win against Bonfim is pretty impressive. It's tough. Only been to decision once. Yeah, fight doesn't go. Probably the most likely. I mean, between the two of these guys, I mean, how many times has Ruffy been to the decision? Probably not many. Once. Yeah. Fight definitely doesn't go. It's a tough match, like I said. I mean, honestly, it's you're not going to know who's going to win this fight until you see, whether Benoît can get the freaking fight to the ground or not. You know what I mean? That's basically what it comes down to. And just reality. And the thing I like about Ruffy, I mean, there's things you could pick him apart, like he does keep his hands low, you can get to him. And so I mean, him getting taken down is a real possibility, but, if he can sprawl, keep his balance, work his way back, even if he gets kind of like partially taken down, but work his way back up, a couple times, and then Benoît's, they both start to fatigue just a bit, and Ruffy is, hitting him with some big shots, because this guy doesn't just, he is kind of a tactician, but like this guy, like he doesn't just not waste punches. Like he strikes to hurt you. Like he strikes to knock you out. Like every strike he throws, and it's not like he's just loading up, but no, he throws with serious intent. So yeah, I mean, it's only going to take a few of those to hurt you. I mean, one of those teeps to the gut, I mean, could just end your night, So I'm gonna lean with Ruffy, but the most likely thing is it just doesn't see the cards, right? I mean, that's the most likely thing, I think. But this should be a super fun fight. I am interested to watch this one. Let's move on. We have the main event. Nassourdine, Imavov going against Caio, Borralho, and this is another fun fight, an interesting one, if nothing else. So let's pull these two up. All right. Nassourdine, this guy's a light-footed striker. He shows pretty good bounce with decent footwork and range management. Decent, like he has some, but it's not phenomenal or whatever. Pretty technical striking. He has a clean 1-2, nice front side teep kick. He will throw it at the thigh as well. I see he'll throw that push kick right to the thigh. Could be pretty brutal. He has tight boxing in the pocket. I see, he has some nice uppercuts and hooks and stuff. He keeps them pretty tight in the pocket. But it seems he has an undisciplined guard. I don't love his guard work. Takedown defense seems to be okay. There's questions, I suppose, but, he seems to sprawl pretty well. Seems to be a pretty sound grappler. But he struggles in position of control. Things like the clinch or like bottom position. And then when we go to the other side, I think that's how you spell it. There it is. All right, Borralho. This guy is light-footed striker, shows really good bounce with solid footwork and good range management. I do really like the way this guy kind of floats in and out. He's able to cover distance pretty quickly, kind of like karate-esque, like in and out. I do like that. He is able to kind of get in and out. He's a switch stance fighter. technical striker that fights behind his jab and picks his shots well. He likes to throw the switch knee. That's something I notice he will try to kind of, he'll try to kind of set it up, but really it seems that, he's able to do it like when he kind of hurts an opponent. You'll see him like throw this jump switch knee to some effect, right? He's a good grappler with submission upside, and he will work his way to, a rear naked choke if it's presented. I'm pretty sure that Imavov is going to be the bigger fighter here. Maybe significantly. Let's look at this. The reach is the same. And it shows him as 6'1" here. But I swear I've seen something on him being like 5'11". I could have swore. But if it says 6'1", we'll just have to see how they measure up at face-offs. I'll definitely be looking at this. It looks like Borralho is the favorite. I agree with that. I think he's the rightful favorite here. I do think that he probably wins this fight. And there's a couple reasons why. I like his ability to maintain range. I love his footwork. And I like that he picks his shots really well. The in and out, pick your shots. Imavov is not a guy that has shown great finishing upside at the UFC level. And I think a lot of it is because he just doesn't have that like nastiness to him. He doesn't have that like I don't know what you call it, but I think Borralho has more paths to victory here. I think he could flat out keep it close on the feet, but I think there's a real hole in Imavov's game. The fact that he does struggle in positions of control, like the clinch on his back, and then he does seem to fade a little bit too. I mean, I seen him he fought pretty hard against Golidze for 5 rounds, but it wasn't long after that he fought Allen, and both these guys were just tanked in the 3rd round. So this is a 5-round fight. I think that Borralho this fight probably goes over 2.5 if I had to guess, but I also think there's a real chance that Caio could finish this in like the 3rd or 4th round, maybe even the 5th. But I think that if as the fight wears on, maybe he will be able to get takedowns. And because this is the other thing that I really, really want to put an emphasis on is Caio is a smart fighter. He's going to look for the whole. I mean, I think all of them do that. They got people around them. They got teams that are going to look for these things, right? But their whole camp is built around this. And so they're going to know that this guy struggles in these positions. I mean, if I can figure it out, I think these guys can figure it out. So they're going to try to put this guy on the map. In my opinion, there ain't no doubt about it, because Imavov is most dangerous on the feet. He's got more length. He does have pretty crisp striking, pretty good boxing, pretty good kicks. He's a big, strong dude, you know what I mean? So I think he's his most dangerous on the feet, and he's not going to present nearly as much resistance on his back, right? So I think he's going to try to get him on his back, try to, work on him, wear him down. Borralho is not a guy that's going to rush it. He's going to take what you give him. And that's what I love about him is, I do this stuff. I break these things down. And this guy is like what all fighters should try to be, honestly. Like, smart. Think about, how your fighting style. Like, I'm really curious to go back and see his first fights and see if he fought anything like he does now. Because there's a lot of guys in the UFC that have a lot of talent, a lot of athletic ability, a lot of things like that, and their style is just not built around winning. It's about, aggression or this or that or whatever. In my opinion, before I close this out, in my opinion, these fighters are layers. You know what I mean? It all starts it all starts with the feet. You know, that's your foundation. You know what I mean? So if you have good footwork, you have good mobility, you have good range management, these are all things that, you know, determine a lot going into the fight. So you have to have that. You know, Borralho has a good chin. You know, he's shown pretty good heart. You know, things like that. You know, these are things that are harder to gauge, but you know, you have to see fighters deal with adversity. You know, what do they do when they're hurt? What are they doing when they're getting choked out? You know, think of Volkanovski whenever he was going against Brian Ortega and he was getting choked out and he freaking flopped like a fish and got out of that. I mean, bro, that's championship heart. People don't want to hear it, but, well, maybe some do, but what's his face? Muhammad Makayev. That dude's a champion, bro. That dude has a championship heart. That freaking submission he was in against Rafael, what was his name? I can't think of his name right now. That Brazilian, he's a beast too. But you know, that knee bar, man, that thing was nasty. And he showed the heart of a champion. So anyways, I know it's a bit of a tangent, but I'm going with Caio Borralho. I think that he just kind of uses his IQ and his footwork, and he gets in and out, does what he can on the feet, try to wear him down as the fight goes, and work to get takedowns. I think that they're going to try to put this guy on his back and wear on him there, and hopefully eventually get a either ground and pound or rear naked choke submission. I think that's how this fight ends, and I think he probably does finish it in like the third or fourth. That's what I think. But we'll see. Only one way to find out. That's tune in, watch UFC Fight Night Paris. Let's run this, guys. Okay, good luck to everyone. Hope you guys enjoy the fights. I think it starts at like 9 a.m. I'm not sure, but we're gonna love it. We're gonna enjoy it. All right. Till next time, guys. Peace out.